Hi, thank you for joining me in this episode of Coming to Know Yourself. In this episode, we're going to talk about what I call the captivating mind, the secrets and mysteries of what goes on inside our whole inner world. And so I wanted to start out with the idea of happiness, why we search for it, and why we seem to lose it the moment we find it. And so the first thing to discuss is that the mind seems to be some far off space that we tap into, but life is this world and this body and everything that we're doing right now. But in actuality, the mind is where everything is experienced, and not like we get everything from the mind and then we transfer it to this physical experience, but we are literally, the real us is in the mind space. And the illusion is that we are out there in the world and we're actually inside what is called in scriptural writing the kingdom. We are in the kingdom of the mind. Everything around us is our own light. Everything that we see is our own light called consciousness. And everything that we feel with the senses is subtle changes in the vibration or ripples upon our real being called awareness, our spiritual being. And our spiritual being exists in the center of what's called the mind space. The mind space is a separate dimension. It's not in the brain. And it exists outside the universe. Yes, there's an outside of the universe, just like in all opposites and duality, where there's an inside, there's an outside. Where there is a perspective of being here on earth inside the universe, there is also a truth that we are outside the universe, outside, not on planet Earth. And so our intangible aspect of reality, the self, thoughts, emotions, the mind, is on the outside of the universe, and the tangible aspect of us is the physical body, this life. And so also in that duality, the body is temporary, this life is temporary, and so our eternal self is the one that's outside of time and space. And so the mind is a separate dimension. It's a field of energy that is radiating around our being, and it is created from the very singularity, the force of our own energy that we emit in the energy all around us outside of the universe called the ether. And the ether is an infinite, boundless expanse of what is called the unified field of consciousness, where every one of us as a being of light and energy is suspended in that field of potential. And we all experience consciousness as a field of vision in our own light that we see and experience reality. Consciousness is seeing, and so awareness is feeling, and feeling is knowing. And so our being is the knowing or the awareness field, where all sensations from the conscious field comes to us and through us. Or if we resist or we attach to something, all sensations get bound up in our awareness, and they become standing waves of ripples on our awareness field that cause the suffering, the struggle, the dissipation of happiness. Because happiness is actually our natural state of being. Happiness is simply pure wholeness of emotional well-being, contentment of our feelings, not seeking to change what we are, not seeking to escape life, to distract ourselves, to find meaning somewhere else other than right now in our own existence. And when we are not being affected by the ripples of change to the five senses, to our thoughts, our emotions, our memories, our past, the awareness field of our being, which is our singularity of light and energy, is in a constant state of sameness. It's just perfect stillness, like a pond. And in that stillness, we experience the blissfulness of clarity, of meaning, of happiness, of contentment. And we're just experiencing pure presence, just the absolute of being. And so In this life, our sensations, our feelings of the human experience has caused us to forget the true state of happiness, the true state of joy, the true state of balance and wholeness inside ourselves. Because the mind space is constantly reinforcing all these sensations and causing ripples on our awareness, our field of being, the self that we refer to as I. And that self that we refer to as I is called the I space, the I am space. It exists in the center of the mind, in your own dimension. You're all alone there. And that is the reason why we avoid sometimes being alone, because in truth, sometimes we're not ready to face the fact that we are alone and we've never been in the presence of anyone or anything. We've always been in the mind space, in our own dimension, experiencing everything kind of separately in a recreation. The body picks up the sensations. The brain converts all that into a brainwave signal, a wireless signal of all the 5 senses as sensory data. And that's transmitted through a portal in the center of the brain, mind over matter, and the vibrations and sensations of the brainwave touches upon a field of energy within the anterior nucleus of the thalamus in the center of the limbic system of our brain. And those vibrations transfer into the ether outside the universe directly to our individual mind space, the field of energy around us. And that field of energy basically copies that vibration and sends it into the subconscious field of our mind to draw from our experiences, our familiarity, to form a perception, a perceptive field of resonance for us to experience consciousness through the feeling of our awareness. We actually experience everything through feeling. The knowledge of knowing is the feeling of awareness through contrast of what was to compare what is. And so we experience things based on how we feel, positive, negative, or neutral. And our natural state of being is a state of sameness, a state of neutrality. We're always experiencing it, but we tend to focus on the changes, the senses constantly stimulating us emotionally. And so that sameness, that inner peace, is put off to the side as a casual recognition as what we call the feeling of being alone. But that feeling of being alone is actually the feeling of our being. And when all the sensations from the mind space, thoughts, feelings, emotions, the senses, what we see, how we feel about what we see, what we experience, when all of that is at rest and we're not distracted in the human experience, then that alone feeling returns to the all-one feeling, because the ripples of change on our being calm, and the stillness of our energy returns to the calm pool of just beingness. And so then we experience the all-one feeling instead of the alone feeling. And in that all-one feeling, we become connected to everything. So we don't feel alone in our mind space. We feel all one with everything, connected, because every field of consciousness is connected through the unified field, and we're all together telepathically in the oneness of everything. There is no real separation. It's only when we're separated by thoughts and feelings and division and identity and our past that we feel like we're separate from things. But essentially, we still are an individual. So in order to be an individual, we have carved out in the space of existence our own field of energy to house our I space, our personal sovereign place of presence, of existence. There is all of existence, and then there is our space that existence gave us, that we came into existence when we first awakened to reality. And so that space of existence is our I space, that place of self-awareness, that place of presence, that place of signature vibration of our being that tells us through feedback that we exist and that we are real and that we have an effect on reality. The difficult thing is when we incarnate into this human experience, we forget that that's who we are. And we then identify with the sensations of the human body, with identity, with past, with present, with seeking the future, with trying to understand ourselves out here, or asking the mind to tell us what's going on or who we are. But because we forget who we are, we form an empty vessel within our conscious field called the ego, a construct that fills with experiences, identity, trauma, past, desires, sensations, pleasure, avoidance, fear. And the mind filters all of our input of the conscious field through that ego, and it draws from our soul. Our soul is like a tapestry, a portrait of our life that we weave together to form a lens of reality, an outlook on our own life. We're kind of like our artist rendition of our total life up to this point. And so the ego pulls from that, and the mind uses our soul, but it uses the ego construct to basically identify with us. No longer is it identifying with our I space, it's identifying with the ego space. And so now our mind is divided between our eternal space of I and the temporary space of ego. And so it's not like the mind is our enemy. It's just trying to keep consciousness and life still flowing. And since we forgot who we are, the mind is no longer interfacing with us. It has to have an intermediary. And so it's interfacing with the ego space as our secondary I to then get the input from us, the reaction. And so ego for me represents an acronym, emotionally generated outlook. Because when we're operating through the ego, through trauma, through past, through desires, through want, through yearning, through struggle, we see life through an emotionally generated lens. We're always emotionally affected by everything, jumping from one feeling to the next because we're not centered in our stillness, in our peace. And so we're looking for a center. We're looking to belong somewhere. We're looking for meaning through the ego out there in the physical world of illusion, trying to find our center. When our center is really at the center of the spiral and our life is spiraling around it, and our personal boundary of I am is being put off to the side. And we're focused out here on all the sensations of the five senses. And so when we can take time out and just become still and want and self-gratification and escapism from the mind, and just come to draw our full attention to that alone feeling, to really feel and remember our true self, to awaken, to detach from the ego I and awaken to the eternal I, that alone feeling. Because our real self, we can never see it. In the ego identification, we can mentally get an image of ourselves, our name, what we think of ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, what other people think about us, how we look physically. But in the true eternal I space, we can only just be. We can only just eternally see outward and experience. We can't actually see ourselves. All we can ever do is feel ourselves. I feel, therefore I am. Just like Spinoza coined. And so that alone feeling when we're all by ourselves is the recognition of our signature vibration of presence. We are saying when we're all by ourselves, I feel alone. We're actually saying, I feel my true self, my being, my presence. And if we can be with that presence long enough, we can come back to ourselves and remember it so strongly that we have a shift in our consciousness, a wow moment of, oh my God, I'm not this ego I, this identity I've been being. I am this feeling of awareness that I've shoved into the background. The awareness that feels like it's inside my head looking out of these eyes is actually who I am. And in that shift, the awakening, kind of like in Hindu where they have that dot on their foreheads, the third eye, our awareness shifts from feeling like it's back here in the background to right in front of our foreheads, floating out here as a formless awareness of being. Because the physical body, when you look at it right in front of you, it feels like it's in your presence. But the body is actually on earth as a biomechanical machine, gathering the senses. The brain is converting it to an electrical chemical impulse, which is then processed by the limbic system and the visual cortex and the audio cortex into a magnetic field of brain waves, which is then transferred into our mind dimension and an extremely powerful virtual reality with our light and our energy populates this body around us and everything that we see. And if you close your eyes for a moment, you'll see the illusion disappear. And you'll see all these speckles of color in the darkness. And that's actually your mind energy field waiting for input from the visual cortex of the brain to send that signal to our mind space. And if you bring the lights down really low to almost like a nightlight level, where darkness and light are very, interchangeable, where you can barely see your hand in your presence, you will notice how the darkness has trouble recreating your image, like tracers. And it's because your mind is looking for that signal to recreate the illusion of your hand in front of you. And when you awaken to that alone self, that feeling of aloneness, to become the all oneness, that awareness of self, and it feels like it's floating out in front of your forehead, that's because the body is just a manifestation behind your being and around your being. And you are just a formless energy singularity of light and energy. And so when you awaken to shifting your focus and attention to being centered in that alone, all one feeling of yourself, then you're focused on that being who you are, rather than the sensations of the body, the feeling of the head, being your focus and center of who you are. And that becomes your sixth sense, the sixth sense of self-awareness. And so the real truth is that right now you're inside your dimension of mind called the kingdom of heaven. Heaven being a state of consciousness that we have fallen from. We're in a lower state of consciousness. And everything around you is an illusion. It is just light of your own being manifesting patterns from the frequency of the brainwave sent from the body, from the physical universe dimension to your spiritual dimension, populating all these patterns and this body you see, and creating a one-for-one sensation with subtle changes of your awareness field, of feelings. But you're really experiencing everything as just one sensation, the sixth sense of self-awareness, subtle changes in your own feeling field. And what you see is just simply your consciousness, your light, before you, changing patterns of light from your own energy field, receiving the brainwave signal, populating this image in front of you. And same thing with thoughts. Thoughts are just subtle energy changes in the mind, rippling across your awareness field of being, temporarily. But because we're affected by them a lot of times, especially trauma and past memories, we either resist those ripples upon our being or attach to them. And when we resist or attach and we don't let them flow through us, they become a standing wave that repeats from our subconscious. And so they create disturbances in our field of awareness. And so we never experience the alone feeling in that all one state, because we're always having these recurring loops of expanding our boundary of all oneness to all these other things. And that's where constant repetition of compulsive thinking happens, is the mind is reminding you that you have all these attachments in the ego, and they can only exist with your attention, your focus. They're echoes. And so compulsive thinking is the mind reminding you, hey, you have these things you need to continually give energy to, emotional energy. So give your focus and attention to these thoughts and these feelings. So your mind is reminding you to expand your boundary out here, but if you let go of believing all these things, right, then you bring your boundary back to just the alone self. And it takes time out from life, from escapism, from self-gratification, from phones, from Facebook scrolling, from stimulation through the senses, and come back to a place of stillness, of really focusing on remembering and feeling that alone feeling. And it's kind of like a subtle smell or a taste. You can taste it and smell that alone feeling. You're aware of it. You experience awareness all the time. But when you focus your attention enough, eventually it becomes so strong, you become centered there, and suddenly you realize, this is me. Not this identity I created, not all this, I'm not all these sensations. This center of awareness is me. Because it's undeniable, it's you. How could you ever be anything else? It's just that we've diluted that experience with all these other sensations in the five senses. And if we can put those aside for long enough, then the sensation of our self-awareness will become so apparent, we will remember and we'll enter that oneness of pure presence and awaken to who we really are. And that's when the ego begins to dissolve and the mind begins to create a new relationship with us, with truth. And we become connected to all of reality and what's called the Akashic records, all that has come to an existence so far. The truth of everything is now accessible, and we can channel all truth to us, and the mind will give us truth instead of illusion and fear and fleeting pleasures. And so I wanted to talk in this series about the captivating mind. Because when we believe what the mind is feeding us as who we are, we think the thoughts are us because it's so familiar. It sounds like our own voice. But it's really just like the mind's like Alexa talking to us, mimicking our thoughts, giving us something to reflect upon with like a verbal field of our thoughts for us to reflect and resonate our own feelings against, a backboard for our own journal of our thoughts and feelings. We are not our thoughts and feelings. We are the observer of the creation of those thoughts and feelings. And we are the ones that create those thoughts and feelings. We choose whether something is negatively a feeling of polarity or positively a feeling of polarity or simply a neutral state of just the peaceful state of our existence. And if we just allow and accept experience of thoughts, experience of emotions, experience of situations, to just come and just observe them and just allow them to be what is, to pass through us, to acknowledge those feelings, but don't attach to them as being who we are, then they just pass like a ripple across our being. And then we realize, oh, that was just a temporary sensation. Everything has always been temporary. Everything shall pass through us as long as we let it come to us and pass through us without avoidance, without resistance, without fear, without judgment of, oh, this is not good, this is good. This is what I like, this is what I don't like. Just allow it to all just be experience. And so our mind is, especially with trauma, it's so tough to let go of trauma because our ego is identified with it being something that is who we are. But trauma is just held beliefs of things we have not dealt with, something that we identify with as part of our identity. But we are not our memories. Our memories are experiences. And we don't possibly remember every single experience we've ever had. So how can we be all of our experiences? Our experiences are just simply hindsight. They're something to reflect upon, a contrast for wisdom. We are simply the one who experiences all these things. And just like we watch a new movie and we have new experiences, life is a movie continually and eternally coming to us and through us. And we are the projector. We project our feelings, our meaning onto the experience. Our light projects the patterns that we see. Our energy of awareness projects the experience of the feelings and the emotions that give us meaning to everything that we experience. And so if we just take a break, go somewhere, be in the woods, take a break from stimulus and do things that promote self-awareness, meditation, yoga, breath work, listening to music that has no words that incite emotional past feelings, and then just sit in the quietness and breathe and be in nature and just be with yourself and allow the emotional energy we've spent on everything up until this point come back to us. All that we experience and focus on requires a sacrifice of conscious energy, of that passion, that joy, that motivative energy. And it sacrifices degrees of clarity, of emotional energy, of inner peace, which compromises our reasoning, our logic, our understanding of life. And so all of that sacrifice of emotional energy and conscious energy is bound up in our subconscious, in our ego, held, and brings us down in our levels of consciousness to keep us away from that heavenly consciousness, that bliss, that inner peace. And so to reclaim that energy requires us to sit still emotionally, without want, without self-gratification, without doing, without striving, grasping, avoiding, and just sitting. Like it says, be still and know thyself again, the real self. The stillness of no desire, no personal desire, just rest. Have a session of deep rest. The reason why we suffer and we don't have that perfect happiness is because we're in various states of depression. We're in a depressed state of consciousness. We need deep rest, a deep rest session from emotional stimulus. And in that rest, there's nothing to do. There's no seeking. There's no need to understand out in the mind. All understanding is just perfect emotional clarity, seeing life from the emotional lens of clarity. And in order to get there, we just have to rest from distraction and wait for us to travel the spiral from where we are back to our center of wholeness, of being, of pure presence. The cosmic flow of everything flows in presence, in self-awareness and stillness, of being the silent witness of reality, accepting and allowing all to just flow and be what is, and being in that integral moment, just sustaining our own integrity of honesty, of authenticity, of sincerity, and not avoiding and judging the moment, and just being in pure devotion to ourselves, to the moment, just being forgiving and compassionate to ourselves, to being kind to ourselves, and in return expressing that kindness and forgiveness and patience, understanding that we give ourselves, and filling ourselves up with to other people and to other situations, just allowing everything to just have that kindness, that understanding, so that we can rest and let the universe bring us back to that stillness. There's nothing to do but to be still and let go of the mind. It's not being free from the mind, it's us freeing the mind from ourselves, from our own judgment, from our own grasping, from our own control, the need for pleasure, the need for sensation. The mind captivates us because we are captivating the mind and telling it to be something that it is not. And it is trying to be the controller of reality for us, but really it's just supposed to be a window into the multiplicity of a reality to give us ambiance. Life is not meant to be controlled, it's meant to be flowing to us for just ambiance. And the greatest experience of life is our own being. The highest of all experiences is the bliss and inner peace of ourselves and the absolute joy of unconditional love for ourselves and for reality, the oneness of everything. There is no greater experience than knowing ourselves. And so when you're in that high of reality, of the truth of ourselves, then everything around us just becomes ambiance and a chance to mirror and express our own existence outward, a devotion of service to others and to the moment, to reflect back to us our own being of pure bliss, pure joy, of inner peace, of pure presence, of that unconditional love that we are. The emptiness of all the striving, of all the suffering, from waking up and gathering the wisdom and the hindsight from the vessel of the human experience that acts like a negative experience, kind of like a negative on a photo, where we shine our own light of hindsight through that experience so we can get a portrait of who we really are, which is the perfect light, the perfect love, the perfect truth of existence. And there never was anything bad or something to get or earn. There was never anything to acquire to be worthy of being you, of being who you are. You are worth everything right now. You have always been the greatest purpose of everything. Just being you is the purpose of life. Pure presence. Just like a flower is beautiful because its presence is being all that it can be, we are just meant to be all that we can be, which is love and the truth of ourselves. And so, until the next time, remember, the captivating mind only captivates us when we believe everything that it feeds us. Be still, come back to yourself. Feel thyself and know yourself. I feel, therefore I am. And this alone feeling is who I am. It is my being. And what I am being is all one. Until then, I send you my love and my peace.